We're going to get into the injury report with Dr. Kevin McHale, and he joins us every Thursday. The injury report brought to you by Cape Regional Health Systems and Dr. Kevin McHale, Cape Regional Health Systems and Penn Orthopedics, the best of both worlds for a healthier life. For an appointment, call 609-463-CAPE or visit caperegional.com/orthopedics. And speaking of injuries, looks like a game-time decision tonight for Rob Gronkowski. You know, he's had the injury issues all throughout his career, and now there's a possibility that he misses the game tonight. But, Doc, we got other injuries to get into, and let's take a look at some very interesting, unique injuries this week. And I guess one of them, I don't know that many people have ever heard of before, Doc. First off, we welcome you back. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, as always.
Yes, man, and Dr. Kevin McHale was used to work in the Patriots organization on the sideline, working with the injuries over there with the Pats, and I'm sure you've worked with guys like Gronk many times. He's always got the injury bug, it seems. But how about this one from Derek Carr? A transverse process fracture in his back. They're saying 2 to 6 weeks. Anything with a back and a fracture sounds like, ow, that could be a long time. 2 to 6 weeks, though, of many people's time frame on this one. What do you know about this particular injury?
Yeah, you know, when you talk about a back or spine fracture, you think it's going to be some devastating injury that the guy's going to be out for the season. But actually, this is one of the more benign injuries that we've talked about this whole year. A transverse process fracture, it's actually just a bony process, a little bony bump on the back of your spine. You know, last week we talked about the disc injuries in the spine. We were talking about the front of the spine, where you have your kind of the stacking blocks of the spine, the vertebrae separated by those shock-absorbing discs. But on the back, there's this arch of bone there that protects the spinal cord, and they have these little bony prominences there. And when you fracture those, fortunately, they're not important for the stability or protection of the spine. But it's more of a pain situation where obviously it's sore when you break anything, and it's a matter of time for those for the pain to subside. You know, the good news for him, Tony Romo, Cam Newton, both of these guys had fractures of 2 transverse processes in the past. A couple of years back, they only missed about 1 game before they got back to play, and they got to play at a good level when they got back on the field. So it shouldn't be too long of a time, assuming that he doesn't have more than 2 fractures. He should be back on the field in a couple of weeks.
So this is something, as you just mentioned, I think you said Romo and I think Cam Newton had this. They only missed 1 game, that's it, so there's a potential that he could be back next week?
Yeah, you know, it's a possible. Yeah, obviously we don't know exactly the severity of the injury for him and how many of these transverse processes were involved. But it is, you know, it's a very painful injury. Actually, when we see these injuries, it's usually in people in car accidents. You know, that just kind of goes to show how violent some of these hits are in the NFL. So it's not to underestimate how severe the pain can be, but it should just be a matter of time before he starts feeling a little better and he gets back out on the field.
Ty Montgomery, let's go to him. He's dealing with multiple broken ribs. And I always love hearing how guys who do what you do work with guys with broken ribs, because there's not much you can do to heal them. They just kind of rest. I guess it's just a pain tolerance thing. When a football player says, I got broken ribs, or when you tell him he has broken ribs, what's the next step?
Yeah, there actually isn't much of a next step. You know, the first step is to rule out any associated injuries, right? So we know that rib fractures in general can be very dangerous, and that's when you have a displaced rib fracture or multiple rib fractures that, you know, could puncture a lung or injure a vital organ. And those are very, very important things that we rule out. But, you know, as soon as you're beyond that and you know that the player's safe from an overall standpoint and he just has these rib fractures, you know, the actual the remainder of the rib cage kind of does the work for us. You know, as an orthopedic surgeon, we splint fractures, we cast fractures, we put plates and screws to hold them together. But all the intact adjacent ribs provide that internal splint for us. So it actually is fairly stable. But, again, another thing that's very, very painful. These guys are in a lot of pain. It hurts to just take a deep breath, let alone get hit by a 260-pound linebacker. So you know, he's definitely, when he gets back to play, likely will wear a protective vest. And, you know, it can take a little time. Jordy Nelson missed 1 game in the playoffs last year and was able to get back to play for the AFC Championship game with a few rib fractures. You know, hopefully the fortunate thing for him was having on a Thursday night, so he got a couple extra days, but it's still going to linger and bother him for a little while. So I wouldn't be surprised when he gets on the field. It'll be in a little bit of a more limited role until the pain gets better and better.
Dr. Kevin McHale with us here from Cape Regional Health Systems. Cape Regional Health System, the best of both worlds for a healthier life. 463-CAPE or visit caperegional.com/orthopedics. All right, this one is very interesting because the owner of the Colts thought, hey, he's going to be ready to start the season. That didn't happen. Andrew Luck returning to practice this week. Should people be excited? He had surgery 10 months ago to repair a torn labrum in his shoulder. Now, he'll be back at practice this week. Who knows what he's going to do, but what is the timetable for a torn labrum, specifically for a guy who throws the football?
Yeah, so you're exactly right in being concerned because he's a thrower. That changes things a little bit. Surprisingly, we just talked about rib fractures, spine fractures, and this is actually the most significant injury we're talking about with regards to getting back to playing football. So the labrum is that cartilage rim to the socket there, and it plays a major role in providing stability to the shoulder. And he tore the back of his labrum, which he had surgery repaired in January, as we know. And the interesting thing is the surgery itself is fairly straightforward. You put these little anchors in there and use the suture to kind of reattach that labrum to the bone, and it doesn't take all that long to do. But the rehab for a thrower is very lengthy. And the reason is you got to make sure he gets back his strength back before he gets back to playing. And the act of throwing puts a ton of load and strain on the back of the labrum, which is where he tore. So you have to be very careful because every time he throws the ball, it's like trying to tear open that repair. The rough timeline is usually around 9 to 12 months before they're back to throwing at that level, and he's kind of right on track. He finished 9 months of rehab now he's back to practice, but he needs to show that he can throw at the speed that he needs to throw, with the accuracy that he needs to throw, and do it without pain, and that can take a few weeks. They're going to really watch how much they advance the distances of his throws, the routes that he's throwing, just to kind of gradually introduce him back to playing. But, they're doing the smart thing and taking their time getting him back, and it's actually not very surprising that he was not ready for the beginning of the season.
By the way, as we opened up this conversation, and that's interesting on Andrew Luck because of their record. Who knows what they'll be when he's ready to return? Do they just shut him down for the season? Do they want to get him out there? So that's something to keep an eye on. But torn labrum, obviously a major, major injury there. Rob Gronkowski, there is no sure thing he'll play tonight. He has a thigh contusion, and that sounds like, come on, man, you got a bruised thigh here, you got to be able to play through that, but that's more painful than it seems. You get a deep bruise in that thigh area that could really impede you from running.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we talked about these soft tissue injuries when we're talking about hamstring strains and thigh contusions. They're all kind of similar in that when you get this direct impact to a muscle, it leads to a significant injury there, where there's a lot of bleeding inside the muscle itself and bruising. And for him, on a short week, it's a little bit more difficult to expect him to get out to play. It just takes time for this stuff to resolve, to get your motion back, your strength back, and to be able to perform at that level. So, if it was a Sunday game, probably be a lot easier to make that call and get him back out on the field. I feel like the Patriots are always kind of playing the long game, and they want to protect these guys. And if they need to sit them for one game, they will. But it's just a matter of trying to make sure you get the players out there in a safe manner and make sure that they're able to perform at the level they need to so they don't get themselves more hurt.
Right. And you work with Gronk. Is he a good guy to work with there?
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's exactly like you'd expect him to be. He's a funny guy. He's a hard-working guy when it comes to football. And he's a little bit of a goofball and quite funny in the locker room. It was really but always grateful for anything we're doing for him and really appreciative. So he was one of the nice guys on there. And actually, I can't complain about the whole team. Really, it's just they had a really good, hard-working work ethic there, and it was a good experience working with those players. So you can't help but kind of root for him a little bit. But I'm still the Eagles fan, but he's a good guy out there.
Dr. McHale, what season was that? The 2000?
The old Denver AFC Championship loss. That would be that season. It's saddled between the two Super Bowl years. Right, not that I'm jealous or anything.
With the New England Patriots now, you can see Dr. McHale with Cape Regional Health Systems and Penn Orthopedics, the best of both worlds for a healthier life. For an appointment, call 609-463-CAPE or visit caperegional.com/orthopedics. And, of course, the injury report. No big Eagles injuries, although that Fletcher Cox calf looks like it can still keep him out, and a mysterious Wendell Smallwood knee problem that we might get into next week if he misses this week's game. But they made it relatively healthy this week against the Chargers. We'll see what the Cardinals game has. Doc, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good. I'll talk to you then.